lets that practice show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But what do you say we start on a not mirror?
We'll start in the one that isn't a mirror. That's Jim Davis and Ari Lax. Azorius aggro versus Sultai mid-range.
Right, and the big draw to starting on this Azorius aggro deck is it's one of the decks that can kind of go head-to-head against the Sultai one if they don't have one of their Wild Growth Walker starts.
Right. See if Ari can do it. He has Incubation Druid. That's something that Jim should be able to hang with as he starts on Sky Marcher Aspirant.
And this is particularly nice for Ari because even if it's not a Wild Growth Walker, it does advance him into the mid and late stages of his curve faster.
Mm-hmm. Second Incubation Druid drawn for Ari this turn. He'll start with Merfolk Branchwalker, picks himself up a Breeding Pool, and then passes.
Do you...
Cast down? You think there might be one there?
Do you smell that? That's a removal spell
yeah.
if I ever smelled one. I'm trying so hard to turn this into like a smell what the Rock Scott cooking meme, but like I don't. Wrestling jokes aren't our dynamic, right?
No.
Those are the other ones. Those are the other casters.
Ari's playing the Rock, right?
That's the funniest joke you have ever told me, Matthias.
Oh, wow.
I want you to know that is. I am red in the face. I'm trying so hard not to laugh right now. This is all genuine, I promise.
All right, cooks up a cast down for that night token. There we go. It's gone. Here's your Benalia from Jim Davis.
You're going to have to go for a minute. I'm recovering.
Okay, all right. Ari plays Jade Light Ranger, draws Drowned Catacomb, and now Hydroid Krasis. Yeah, that's staying on top. Oh, he hits that one.
That's kind of the thing that Lax really needs to be finding here, is things that just help him tank up and keep developing. Yeah. This is why we see the Explorer creatures is so powerful, is they draw resources and they gum up the board against these aggressive creature decks.
Now, how greedy do you get on this Krasis? Do you wait and do you adapt the Incubation Druid first and then go for a big Hydroid Krasis?
It depends on the texture of Lax's hand. If he has other things to do next turn for 3 mana, you can just adapt the Hydroid Krasis, adapt the Incubation Druid, and then just cast whatever else is in your hand. In the following turn, cast a big jellyfish.
Mr. Benalia goes to Chapter 2 to make a night token. There we go, 2/2 Vigilance. Ah.
Ooh, you see Jim Davis getting ready for his attacking posture there.
There you go, yes, tries to limber up here. Get that Adano Vanguard in there.
And red zone.
Swings on in for 3, Ari down to 12. Here's Legion's Landing. Up to 9 permanents.
I have a feeling he'll be able to find another one.
Well, interesting here, he's going to post-combat gain City's Blessing. Here with the Dauntless Bodyguard. It feels like there's 2 damage left there.
Yeah, it feels like that may have been missed, but on the other hand, if he has something like a Venerated Loxodon, he may just be looking to grow everything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, Jim's not going to miss the 2 free damage. There was a point to all of this.
Wow, turns out our former players champion may be pretty good
Maybe he knows what he's doing?
Yeah, this is why we're watching this match. Both of these are like 2 of the strongest players in the room.
Oh, is this Fine Finality from Ari? It's the one card Jim can't beat. It's not. It's Hydroid Krasis. I was just thinking, he goes straight for that 4 mana on Jim's side. I'm thinking, oh no.
No, not like this, not like this.
Draw 2, gain 2. That's fine.
Notably, this Dauntless Bodyguard, also a knight.
Yes.
Going to grow from this history of Benalia.
A Dauntless Bodyguard, a knight. A Danto Vanguard.
No, I believe that one's a soldier.
Oh.
Oh no, this trigger's only going to be worth 4 power.
Oh no.
Gosh.
And Ari's made 2 creatures.
Knights in the deck being Dauntless Bodyguard, Benalish Marshal, and the tokens from History of Benalia.
Right, the vampires are all soldiers. And yeah, all right, Conclave Tribunal going to take care of that flying blocker with the Hydroid Krasis.
That's what we call a big game.
I like how Jim's playing this. He's basically beating any card that isn't Find Finality with how he's playing.
Yeah, and this is the draw to the white decks here, is if you don't have the specific answers that are good enough in the matchup, the cards from the white deck are just so efficient.
Transform into a Danto on the attack for Jim. And yeah, Ari's going to lay out some blocks here. 3-2 Dauntless Bodyguard. It's going to be blocked. 3-3 Night Token. Actually, those are pumped more, you mentioned, with the history of Benalia.
Live mic in coming from Ari. Oh crap.
Yeah. Well, I like how he's blocking. He's just double chump blocking, right? And that's...
Oh, he knows his out here.
It's just fine finality.
Yeah, it's finality or bust. And even then, if he does that, Davis does have this flipped Adanto the first for it.
All right, is it finality? It's a land. Land. Oh, wow, that is...
That's 13 of a kind. Unfortunately, not quite the Hold'em hand that's going to win the game.
Don't you like it when you have a hand of all lands and you cast a big Hydroid Krasis and draw more lands?
No, I don't like that. I know you're a Primeval Titan guy, Matthias.
I do like playing decks with way too many lands. That's, That's not going to do it
for Davis here, though.
Yeah,
that was strong, and that really just shows the strength of this white deck, where you do need things that aren't literally hate cards, but things as pushed and powerful that can run away with a game, like Wild Growth Walker, Fine Finality, in order for Sultai to stand up to this. Because Lax got to play Magic, right? He curved and he got to do his thing. He played a 6-mana Hydroid Krasis, and that wasn't close to good enough.
Having that be the top card of his curve. That's where you want to be.
Exactly. He got several turns to play, and it just was not close to good enough without something that just kills 5 creatures out of 1 card.
So I'm going to look at sideboards for Ari. There's so much pressure on him to have Find Finality. I'd like to see some other sweepers out of the sideboard, but he actually hasn't shown up with any.
No, so most of what Lax was mostly looking to fight here was things that are good against burn, where sweepers tend to be a little bit weaker.
Right.
And that was kind of the aggro deck going into the weekend that people were expecting to play against a lot of, and what made this Azorius aggro deck play so well. And then also wanted to fight against the Sultai decks, and then the anti-Soul decks in Esper that we've been seeing a lot of this weekend. We see those Duresses, those Plague Crafters, Negates, all that are going to come out of the sideboard in those grindy matchups, but don't necessarily play very well here. We're mostly just going to be looking at, say, Thrashing Bronodon, Assassin's Trophy, Cast Down, Vraska's Contempt, and not
anything
much
that
else.
Removes a creature.
Exactly, but part of the strength of the Sultai deck is a lot of the cards that are good against aggressive strategies are already in the main deck. These are your Wild Growth Walkers and Fine Finalities. Lax is just going to need to kind of shave on some of the weaker cards and mulligan aggressively to those cards that let him just put the game out of reach from Davis.
All right, on the Sultai mid-range deck, a lot of these 2-color decks becoming 3-color decks as we've completed the cycle of guilds here in Ravnica. That means you can also see that with the guild kits. They are available for pre-order at Star City Games. Now, you already had the first 5 guild kits from Guilds of Ravnica, but these are the Ravnica Allegiance guilds. So we have Azorius, Orzhov, Rakdos, Gruul, and Simic. Those are available for pre-order now, but they will ship mid-month, February 15th.
Big fan of these as someone who plays a good bit of Commander. You know, these aren't Commander decks, but they're almost like greatest hits.
Right.
You know, we see Teza, that Orzhov Scion. I love that new artwork, and it's a great Commander. All of these are fine Commanders. That Rurik Thar artwork's nice. Zagana, that's the standard playable one, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
this is the new Zagana, not the Prime Speaker.
Exactly, and that card's nice. I'm guilty of playing some Simic Merfolk in Standard, and she is a Merfolk that plays quite well with both Kumina as well as Deep Root Elite. There's some nice stuff going on there.
One match game result in is Jim Davis winning game 1. So for Team BCW, Tannen Grates, Ross Merriam, Jim Davis, each of them kind of with a different goal here. Jim Davis, our former players champion at 34, my popular streamer here. This tournament here already going to get him onto the leaderboard. He was 33rd going in. So actually in the top 32 get buys. That he'll certainly see his standing improve with this tournament finish.
Oh yeah, and he's just such a monster. I had the opportunity to play with him in the Team Standard Super League. Under Team Star City Games with him and Jadine Klimperens, and just hearing him talk about Standard, it's very obvious he's just on another level, is very good at what he's doing. And, the deck that he's playing this weekend is a little bit out of his wheelhouse, but that also says that he knows it's good this weekend, and making it this deep into the tournament He's
Yeah.
he's getting paid for his decision.
What I like is how Jim is not afraid to mix up his play style. So when Jim first came on the tour, he was known as a control deck player.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
you know,
Those
do
Glacial
nothing
Fortresses have
Glacial
not done this
Fortress.
before.
Right. But then we saw, his Players' Championship win, for example. Yeah, he played Jeskai Black, but he actually meted by switching to Eldrazi and ramp decks. That's what he won his Players' Championship with. So breaking out. And then this year, Jim has actually been in the last 6 months about white attack decks, these are just all such different parts of his range. We saw at the last Invitational designing a venerated Luxodon white aggressive deck for Modern, and now we see him playing Azorius aggro.
That was wild. The old Sheffet Dune stratagem.
Right. Yeah, so it just continues to add to his range, and we're seeing that this weekend.
Oh, yeah. He's incredibly strong. He's been saying, you know what, I'm going to be very serious about Magic, and if I'm going to do that, I need to expand my range. I need to push myself to get better. And that's the thing that really separates the good players from the great players.
Right, I think in the past we would have seen Jim be a player where, hey, really slow Esper control is good. Why am I thinking any harder than that? And you just register it.
It's obvious.
But I know talking with him about his tournament this weekend that Azorius aggro has been very good for him here. It's positioning on day 2, especially with both the top 2 decks being slow decks that you can negate. He's got a good thing going on.
Oh, absolutely. And just looking at his sideboard, you can see, say, a Johnny out of the board, negate. He's someone who knows how to pick apart a slow Esper deck.
See here. Going to game number 2, we'll put Ari on the play. Now, do you board in your negates in this matchup as well?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more worried about the creature things that can punk me out early, like Wild Growth Walker. If he has something like Finality, you have to be holding up negate for all the turns that he could be casting it. Because if you're putting the card in your deck, you're kind of making a commitment to making it good. And trading it 1-for-1 with something like a Vraska's Contempt probably isn't worth it when you're having to just shave a creature anyway. You could just have the creature on the battlefield instead of picking the spot for this negate.
Both players keeping on 7 here for game number 2. That's the hard part about sideboarding. Just when you think these mid-range decks, first of all, they always gain a lot out of sideboarding. They sideboard really well. Black-green X decks. And on top of that, they gain extra value because they are very hard to sideboard against.
Right, and mid-range in general is one that tends to sideboard better than any other strategy because it hedges a little bit in its main deck against both aggressive and control strategies, but post-board you get to cut the anti-aggro cards against the control decks and vice versa.
Yeah, and then it's hard to board. What do you board in against a deck of all good cards?
Well, and here's that first check against the aggro deck.
Yeah, Wild Growth Walker, the turn 2 play from Ari. Azorius does not have a lot of answers to that. He's going to cast a Danto Vanguard. You could see Jim go for Baffling End out of the sideboard, but that doesn't feel very good either.
No, that's really your only answer to it on turn 2. Otherwise, you have to wait for something like Deputy of Detention or Conclave Tribunal.
And even Deputy of Detention, I'm pretty scared about. This is a deck with a lot of removal. The Walker would come back.
Oh, you absolutely do not feel good about it. I'm merely just listing the things that you could be doing here.
Yeah, that's actually a list of all the things that can answer it in the 75.
Exactly. Otherwise, oh no, there's something that's pretty good against it that doesn't necessarily answer it, but it does turn it off.
Okay, so what do we have?
That is the Chokotli Honor Guard being peeled off the top for Jim Davis.
Some damage done. Ari did already explore once with Merfolk Branchwalker to get a counter on the Branchwalker and on the Walker.
Right, and this Wild Growth Walker is actually playing double duty in this role where on one end it's undoing the work that Davis already did, and then on the other side of things it's even making it harder to attack because now it's a 2-4.
This is interesting because that damage is done. Jim, rather than making Tocatli Honor Guard, decides, all right, I'm just going to power through. Plays 2 1-drops and Venerated Luxodons the team, leaving the Honor Guard in his hand.
Right, it's incredibly awkward where you want to get it down as soon as possible in case Lax has a Ravenous Chupacabra, but you need your Venerated Loxodon not to get turned off by the Honor Guard.
Yeah, unfortunately, now there is a Chupacabra. Jim loses the 4-4. A tough spot to look at an Honor Guard and have that one happen.
Well, bright side, there are still counters left over, where if that had been a Baelish Marshal, it's gone.
Jim's remaining hand is the 4th land and 2 copies of Honor Guard. Pretty straightforward play, but it's not a board he's winning on yet, and that's concerning.
It will give him the City's Blessing.
You're right, that's 10 permanents.
That makes these sentries much better. Call that one snubby.
Yeah, they make them 4/4s. Now, on the board, Ari actually still has some pretty decent blocks for 4/4s, right? Wild Growth Walker and Chupacabra can double block a 4/4, setting up a pretty clean trade.
It's true, but that does get your Wild Growth Walker off the table, and
Right.
this Adana Vanguard can also attack for pretty close to free here. And the longer the game goes, the worse this gets
Yeah, this
for
is a-
Davis, so he's kind of priced in.
This is a 12-point attack for Jim. It's going to force some sort of block on Ari's side.
This is incredible. We see Lax at just such a high life total. There's even an argument for just saying, yup, take it.
Yeah.
Or just chump with a Ravenous Chupacabra, something to that effect.
I'm really interested to see how much he wants to trade. He could remove both Snubhorn Sentries if he's willing to put all his creatures on blocking duty.
Right, you just put the Merfolk Branchwalker and the Llanowar Elves in front of one, and then Wild Growth Walker and Ravenous Chupacabra in front of the other. But that just leaves you with a Ravenous Chupacabra versus the world.
You see him lining up some blocks here. Looks like he's going to go for that double block to remove at least one of the Snubhorn Sentries. Yeah, he takes the full block. So this is the only way he could remove 2 sentries, and he's going to go for it.
Yeah, and this doesn't feel particularly good, but if Lax doesn't have a sweeper, he's going to have to kill these creatures eventually, so you might as well do it before they've dealt more damage to you.
End result, Ari gets to keep the Chupacabra. He takes 4, goes to 17. And both Snubhorns are down. Now, you're right, Ari is drawing to... We'll see what he's drawing to. Thrashing Bronton on the play, passes.
That's a big one.
A 3/4 here. He still doesn't have an answer to the Adanto Vanguard, but everything else seems to be under control.
Right, so there's even a point where the Adana Vanguard not necessarily being answered, if you can just put 2 toughness in front of it, it is going to make Jim pay a lot of life here. And as the game progresses, Lax's creatures are going to be better at attacking.
Yeah, that's actually interesting, the idea that you block just to push more damage.
Right, and if we're being honest, Lax isn't exactly at a low life total.
No, and I do want to point out something. See Ari taking a hit. The Hydroid Krasis in Ari's hand actually is not affected by Tocatli Honor Guard. It is a cast trigger rather than entering the battlefield. So you see that play here. Ari does get to still gain a life and draw a card.
Right, just kind of playing his cards out, trying to get as far ahead as possible. And that's a card that can break through this battlefield and just attack. If you just block the Adana Vanguard, make Jim pay life,
Right.
attack for 2, and do that for a few turns, that's not sustainable for Davis.
So last turn, Ari took 4 on the Adano Vanguard attack. You mentioned the chump block and make Jim pay 4 life repeatedly plan. Looks like Ari's not on it yet. But is there a point where you start wanting to do that on his side?
So there's a spot, it's basically whenever Ari wants to turn the corner. That's the spot when you want to be doing that.
And he's saying he's not turning the corner just yet. 3 cards in hand. But he is starting to chip back. Hydroid Krasis attacks for 2.
Looks like a bunch of just explore creatures in his hand.
Right, yeah, plays Jade Light Ranger. Now, no triggers there. Remember, 2 Tocatli Honor Guards will take care of that. And nice draw from Jim is a copy of History of Benalia.
Jim's hand is fairly incredible.
Yeah.
He has several spells. The big issue with the History of Benalia is it does get checked by this Thrashing Bronodon.
Okay.
But
I don't mind getting that out of the way
Exactly. That unlocks a lot of Davis's combat here.
here. Yeah, Vanguard attacks. And this is where we're going to start that 4 life game. So a block by Jade Light Ranger. Jim pays 4, goes to 12.
And all of a sudden, the race is fairly even.
Right.
So if Davis goes to 12 and then takes 2 from this Krasis, that's even life totals.
Sky Marcher Aspirant from Jim. He still has the City's Blessing. Now, he didn't make History of Benalia here.
So the big thing here is that ideally you're just going to make Ari tap all of his mana, and then you get to develop the History of Benalia and then get some of Ari's mana the following turn, or you just get something to do with your knight that turn.
And now Ari has changed his plan here, and it makes sense. He drew Memorial to Folly, puts that into play, and because of that draw, he's left back Hydroid Krasis as a blocker.
Oh, right. You just want to buy back this Hydroid Krasis and then, do your mini Sphinx's Revelation again.
Right, so the idea is he wants to chump block with it.
Exactly.
And that just makes things really interesting, right? So then Jim's got to be careful, does he want to attack yet? Does he want to give Ari that buyback? It's not clear.
Right, and there's even a spot where Jim's kind of getting punished by his own honor guards here because he drew a copy of Venerated Loxodon, and that card's just turned off.
Right, so he can still convoke it out, but the 1/1 counters don't happen.
Exactly, and, we're not exactly trying to play Rosemane Centaur here.
Here is an attack. The Sky Marcher Aspirant trades with the Krasis. Jadelight Ranger in front of the Vanguard, but Jim has to pay 4 more. He goes down to 8.
So this may be a spot where we just see Jim throw his hand out to just kind of say, all right, this is the spot, because next turn Ari is effectively committing to Memorial and defalling his Sultai, his Krasis back.
Jim can make History and Venerated Luxodon. He can just make Luxodon. There's a lot of interesting choices here. It looks like he doesn't want to put this History Benalia into the Thrashing Brontodon.
Exactly. So the spot here is ideally you put it Lax in a spot where he has to end up just losing this Brontodon some other way, and then you get both creatures and the final trigger from the History of Benalia.
Wild Growth Walker. A good draw here from Ari. Because it's enough mana for his Memorial to Folly to draw to still be able to activate. The idea here is that Ari wants to be able to tap everything for the Krasis. So he needs to survive through this turn, and it looks like he will. It's a swing from Benalish Marshal and Venerated Luxodon.
And this is a spot where you just gotta attack. It doesn't feel very good. Oh, here it is, though.
Yep.
This is
what Jim was waiting for.
Oh, this is incredible. Davis has been working towards this for several turns.
So I'm interested if Jim is going to pay 4, though, for this Dodonto Vanguard. He knows next turn there's going to be a Hydroid Krasis. That will be a 4/4 flyer. Jim has no flying blockers. If he goes down to 4, he's setting himself up to 1 turn from dead.
Right, so this is a spot where you likely just can't afford to pay for it because you will die the next turn. So unless you are planning to literally kill Ari on your next attack, or force him to trade away that Hydroid Krasis, which is fairly unlikely as things stand at this point, you can't really afford to go down to a spot where you will just die the following turn. The exception to that is if he has something, say, Baffling End, Conclave, Tribunal, etc. Now that this Thrashing Brontodon's going away, the removal he plays that's enchantment-based is a little more reliable.
Right, yeah, Baffling End actually can take care of Hydroid Krasis no matter how big it is. Now, in Jim's hand, he's been holding on to this History of Benalia. He's been waiting to get that Brontodon off the battlefield, and he does it. Now makes the rest of his board, Snubborn Sentry and History of Benalia. Jim did not pay 4 life for that Odonto Vanguard either.
No, but his battlefield looks nice. Picking up this 4/4 or a 3/3 here.
Are you going to play? Oh no!
Oh
his
my
top
gosh.
card. He tapped 6. He thought it was for Hydroid Krasis, but no, it's for a top decked Finality, and that. What a play!
Oh wow!
And Ari had the 1/3/4 with Wild Growth Walker, so he gets to keep a creature around. That is a game changer.
Okay, but Jim's trading here. Like, he drew an Ajani.
Okay, so we're still playing.
Exactly. There's still, this is a point where I was like, well, I guess we're picking up the cards, but no, this is huge. This is big.
It was a huge top deck for Ari. It keeps him in the match. It might even make him the favorite in this game.
Now it's a matter where Jim could even just play this Ajani and minus it to bring something back.
Yeah, so Johnny, this is out of Jim's sideboard for the matchup. It's his value or card. And you mentioned that ability to get a creature out of the graveyard. -2. You can get any creature with mana cost 2 or less from his graveyard to the battlefield. Looks like it's going to be, he's thinking Snubhorn Sentry may be the best one.
That's just the most power that you can make here for the least downside.
Yeah, it's a 3/3, right? So you're comparing to a Dono Vanguard here?
Exactly.
Yeah, the indestructible ability on Vanguard doesn't matter if you're not going to pay for it. So then the 3/3 is just better.
Right, so that's kind of the trade-off here. And we've seen that we're not really trying to pay for that.
Right.
Really paid off that Jim didn't pay for it. It would look real dumb to go down to 4 life and then get Finality.
Here is the Hydroid Krasis. It's for 5 from Ari, so draw 2, gain 2. He passes back. History of Benalia completes the saga. And pumps the Knight, but that's only a 4/3. Hydroid Krasis is a 5/5.
So now it's at the point where you can think about rolling up this Ajani, but you have to consider if it's even going to make it another turn. So you want to figure out, all right, if I roll up and put counters on my creatures, do I want this Hydroid Krasis to have to dedicate a turn to my Ajani, or do I just want to go ahead and get a creature back?
Well, this Knight token for 1 turn here is a 5 power, so it swings. Ari could trade it with the Krasis, but he declines. He'll go to 7.
No, and that's a ton of damage here.
All right, Krasis is going to attack back. That's going to take care of a Johnny.
Right, and this is the nice thing here is knowing it would die, but it buying a turn of reprieve from this Hydroid Krasis attacking is colossal.
But a big turn from Ari. I believe Ari's hand is 2 lands. However, I think Jim's hand is also 2 lands.
Well, that is not going to be good enough for Davis on a battlefield like this. He just doesn't have good attacks.
And back to Ari we go.
And it's still, this is honestly anybody's game. So Davis is naturally pretty far behind on the battlefield. Oh.
Assassin's Trophy from Ari. It's a big draw.
This may just put it out of reach here.
And he swings. Yeah, Jim's going to have to block the Wild Growth Walker, right? Because this is an attack for 8. He doesn't really have a choice.
Exactly. And now there are just 2 lethal threats on Ari's side of the battlefield.
And this is why you don't get into a top deck war with black-green decks.
Oh,
eventually, they outdraw you, and that's the case.
Turns out the deck with X spells a little bit better at having 10 lands on the battlefield.
Yeah, Ari puts his team on the board, winning game number 2. Now, during that game, some news, both Tan and Grace and Ross Merriam take game 1s. But they're going to be heading to 3.
Another Sunday at the team tournament. It's not the finals. They can't lose yet.
Yeah. It's not time. I've seen this movie before.
Oh.
This isn't how it ends.
Oh, this is nice. I haven't got to cover them losing a finals yet, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. Or wait, I'm not supposed to say that. Ooh. I want to be very clear. They're my friends, and they're wonderful people.
It's
but
right.
Tana doesn't have a trophy.
You always
he's got to be reminded of that.
You always tell someone if you're good enough to lose the finals 3 times, then you're gonna get a trophy eventually. And they never want to hear it. It's true.
Oh, I've been there. I have more 9ths than top 8s, Matthias.
Right.
I've heard that several times.
And people say 9. You know, it's just as hard to get 9th as it is to top 8.
Oh yeah. They're like, oh well, you had the record. That's basically a top 8. And I was like, look at my player card and tell me that.
So looking back for game number 3, a big finality from Ari to stay in that one. Ends up getting him the win.
And that was what he needed. He had an early Wild Growth Walker, on a turn 2 Wild Growth Walker that got to trigger, and then also had a finality on 6 lands. So that's the formula to beating the Azorius aggro deck, is you kind of need some mix of these cards and then playing in the middle. You know, the details aren't necessarily as important as long as you get to cast some spells between your Wild Growth Walker and your finality, but you need some combination of those cards to be able to play ball with a deck that's just trying to beat you on the battlefield the whole game.
It still feels like Ari has trouble winning games without the card finality. Game 1, he quickly got in a situation where that was his only nth card he could draw to win. He didn't draw it, and he lost. I think game 2 he was again in a situation where finality was the only card he could draw to stay in the game. He happened to draw it.
It was very close, and the biggest reason for that is the Wild Growth Walker only got to trigger once.
Right.
Those Tocatli Honor Guards came down and did a lot of work to just turn off Wild Growth Walker. Think about how different that game would have been if that Jade Light Ranger had got to dig 2 cards deeper and make the Wild Growth Walker it would have been a 5/7 at the end of that game. It could have been attacking that whole time if it were just bigger, and then we would have seen Lax with 6 more life. It would have totally changed the texture of the game, and that's why Tocatli Honor Guard is so strong in this matchup, but that's why Wild Growth Walker is something that we see these Sultai decks, these Golgari decks leaning into so hard.
And just feels like the impressive part of the Azorius deck here. Ari, that game, got to pump a Walker once, he got to Chupacabra something, he got to cast a Krasis twice, and still needed a top deck.
Oh, exactly. The Azorius aggro deck's very strong. Its resiliency to removal is unmatched in the format. We have Hunted Witness, Adana Vanguard, all these cards that just play through Cast Down and Assassin's Trophy. And then you also have things like Venerated Loxodon that are just worth so much damage for so little investment in terms of mana commitment.
Another result, Bob Huang takes game 2 in the Grixis Mirror on the Legacy table. Evens things up with Tan and Grace.
It also could have just been entirely different that last game if Davis had been on the play. Imagine if he had an extra turn to deploy that Tocatli Honor Guard before Ravenous Chupacabra came down. So kind of the turnabout here between play-draw, where we're going to see Jim getting to start getting out on the battlefield before Ari. That can just completely flip everything on its axis.
Game 3 will put Jim on the play. The checks seem to be, the cards on Jim's side, it feels like you're worried about two things in this matchup. You're worried about Wild Growth Walker and Finality.
Right.
And outside of that, Ari's cards are pretty interchangeable.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it's just kind of error between those two cards, and that's very similar to something that we're just seeing out of these mid-range decks where you have your hammers and you have your cards that dig you to them. And your deck isn't super redundant, but you do have a ton of explore creatures that help you find them.
Mulligan for Jim, and Mulligan for Ari.
This is going to favor Ari a good bit of the time because the Azorius aggro deck does just need a raw quantity of resources to put Ari out of the game.
You have to trigger Venerated Luxodon, you have to get that Legion's Landing transformed.
Exactly. Let's say, what 4-card hand is going to beat Land, Wild Growth Walker, Merfolk, Branchwalker out of Azorius? 2 lands, Tocatli Honor Guard, what?
History of Benalia, and then
maybe
the top of deck's got to do something.
Yeah, and the big issue here is we see a lot of City's Blessing cards, which just
you
reward you for having a raw quantity of resources. But this is just a mulligan to 6.
Right.
It's fantastic how well all of these enchantments that produce tokens play with the City's Blessing as well. There's no way that was an accident, so good job on Wizards for kind of baking those synergies in. But both Legion's Landing and History of Benalia are just incredible with Snubhorn Sentry and Skymarch Aspirant.
Yeah, for a white 1-drop deck to get to 10 permanents on turn 4, that's not normally possible, just how that adds up.
Absolutely not. You usually need some absurd type of 5 1-drop straw or 6 1-drop straw to do it.
7 cards in the opener. You draw cards on turns 2, 3, 4. Normally, without those cards, you'd say the only way I get to 10 permanents is if I cast everything by turn 4 and you remove nothing. But I already win those games.
Yeah, you'd expect Mox Opal or Memnite to be involved most of the time when that happens. Jim not looking super happy with this hand. So the Glacial Fortress in the front of it, so he's got to feel a little bit at home here.
Yeah, all right. Hey, I like this card.
All right, Glacial Fortress, we've been through some times, and we'll get through this too.
Scry to the bottom for Jim. And there is the Glacial Fortress.
Ooh.
It feels like he's kept a 1-lander. And that is the case. It's Skymarch or Dauntless Bodyguard, but he misses the second land.
It's understandable why he took this risk. There's a Tocatli Honor Guard in his hand.
Okay, Wild Growth Walker from Ari. He needs a land here, and we're still playing. Here's Tocatli Honor Guard just in time.
Let's do this.
You see Jade? Is that Jade Light Ranger in Ari's hand? Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they both had the draw. Unfortunately, Davis's colds laxes.
Fortunately for Jim, he's on the play.
Oh, my.
That was a crisis averted for now.
Well, on the draw, he would have drawn the land a turn sooner.
Now, Ari moves a cast down to the front of his hand and plays a tap land. So Jim is back in trouble. I don't think there's a second honor guard. Or is there? Yes, there is. And he'll make it. Okay.
I can't take
Please
these
say,
things.
Thrashing Bronzodon from Ari, no 4th land.
We do see a Vraska's Contempt hiding out in his hand if he can get there.
Right. Ari's hand is still pretty decent. Now he plays a survival game. He has Vraska's Contempt. He has Finality in his hand. Now that's a long ways off, but it is one of the game-winning cards.
At this point, Ari could draw a land every turn for the rest of the game and likely be fine.
I don't know if Jim can beat that, because look at this board. He's not dealing damage anytime soon.
Well, we do see a couple of Lord effects hanging out in his hand. He does have a Benalish Marshal. He does have a Venerated Loxodon
but that's not a Lord effect.
Right, but if we're expecting this Honor Guard to get answered, that does enable the Venerated Loxodon.
Jim, Legion's Landing, another Legion's Landing, and then Venerated Loxodon. And yeah, he's not just in on this Tocatli Honor Guard. No pump, and Ari misses the land again, plays a second Wild Growth Walker.
This is what Jim needs to happen.
This is all going right so far. Jim's
Another
threatening.
Benalish Marshal off the top.
Okay, so 5 creatures. Benalish Marshal. There's a lot to like
Ari's
here.
just going to die.
Yeah, his hand is 2 Marshals.
This is the point where you can't afford to Vraska's Contempt the Tocatli Honor Guard because
you have to hit Benalish Marshal, right?
Exactly. Look at all of this. We're about to flip this Legion's Landing, which makes 2/2s.
Right, Legion's Landing may transform here. Jim will have to throw away a creature to do it, but he will. Attacks with 4, transforms, gets the land.
Oh, we're an attacking squad. Let's do this.
Let's stop before the transform. Is Ari going to let it happen? He does not. Cannot give up the Thrashing Brontodon just yet.
No, that's the 3/4. You need that to block here. All right, this double block actually makes a lot of sense here, where Ari doesn't lose anything, but he does get to kill 2 creatures. And this is the way that you can kind of grind your way back into the game.
Yeah.
Another 4-drop off the top.
Oh my goodness, Ari has to pass. And there's the second Benalish Marshal in Jim's hand. That's going to be huge here.
Jam it, jam it, jam it. Jam, 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 jam.
I mean, I don't know what else you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, if Ari has the cast down, there's already 2 great targets for him.
Right. Ari down to 13 from that last attack.
So the question here is, if you're not actually attacking this turn, it's likely going to be better to just activate Iridanto.
Then to make the other Benalish Marshal?
Make a 2/2, because that's going to be a 3/3 next turn when you play this other Benalish Marshal. And if you think that this Brontodon's just going to kill your creature anyway, then maybe you want to hold back for a turn.
Second Marshal from Jim. So now the Venerate Luxodon's a 6/6. The token is a 3/3. I think the 6/6 is the only attack here, but at 6, Ari can't remove it even with a triple block.
No, absolutely not. This is as free as attacks get.
Does Ari go to 7? He does. Draws, he needs a land, and there he has it. He has to shock to 5 for it. This does not come free, but it turns on that Vraska's Contempt. Now, I think because it came so late.
Oh my God!
It's another one. It's another one. Okay, I was going to say, I think Ari would like to Contempt the Honor Guard because there's a Chupacabra in hand, so it sets up his next turn play, but I don't know that he can afford to do that. Here's another Benalish Marshal. He just has to hit the Marshal.
You have to hit a Marshal to try and just, 1, survive it all, if that's possible.
Is that? Yeah.
And 2, try to set up some kind of blocks that put you back into this game.
Well, Jim's got to figure out if he attacks the team, and he's going to do some math here, and does he win through Vraska's Contempt? It's possible.
Right, so your best spot here is likely, let's say he goes Alpha, you look at Chump Block, Double Block a Benalish Marshal, and Vraska's Contempt another one, and you take 6 and go to 1?
Yeah, here's the swing. So if you assume a Benalish Marshal is dead, Ari is at 7. And then if Ari blocks the 3 biggest creatures, he still takes 6. So he goes to 1, and that's blocking the 3 biggest creatures and nothing else.
Right.
Which means he's not removing any other creatures in combat because it's all single blocks.
Well, you could exile one of the attacking Benalish Marshals.
Okay, you're right.
Instead of the untapped.
You're right.
So you can get a double block on the one of the 4/4 Marshal, which kills it eventually, but you do still end up going to 1 here.
Yeah, which means the other Marshal goes away, which is what Ari's doing here. This is his only line, but he'll still lose all his creatures.
Exactly, he's going to lose.
Oh, well, no, he gets to keep 0-1-3.
Likely a Wild Growth Walker, and then next turn we'll see another Vraska's Contempt.
If he has it, I think his second removal spell was a Chupacabra.
I believe he top decked a second Vraska's Contempt earlier. I may have mistaken
We'll see.
That turn he took off earlier.
Goes up to 7 on the removal. Going to go down to 1. Jim will go to 27.
1 is actually, so this means finality is not good enough anymore. If Jim can keep Ari at 1, you just activate
because
Adanto.
of the Adanto, right?
This This is a bad spot for Ari.
Woodland Cemetery, he does hit a land. That's not a bad
It's
draw.
a painless land, which
Yeah.
doesn't matter necessarily this turn, but it does give him more options, and if he hits an untapped painless land next turn, that's his easiest way getting back into this game.
Right now, his only line would be a Vraska's Contempt on the Benalish Marshal, chump blacking the Luxodon, and going back to 1. It's
Well,
not great.
It's not dead.
Yeah, I mean, if it is your only line that is not dead, it is certainly the correct line. But it's a tough spot.
And it's a fairly horrid position where even if you have all of that and Jim draws a land, you still die.
Ross Merriam has won his match. You see him now looking over to teammate Jim Davis saying, hey, this is going to win the round for us. Let's make sure we get this attack right. They say, yeah, just send it all in. Vraska's Contempt on the Lord. But Ari goes up to 3, blocks the Luxodon, goes back down to 1. And I love this from Jim. He passes,
All right.
leaving up that Adonto.
There it
And that's what
is.
you mentioned. So now Finale doesn't work. And Ari can't do it. He extends the hand, 2 Finalities, Chupacabra, and an Overgrown Tomb. So your winners here, Team BCW. It's Tan and Grace, Ross Merriam, and Jim Davis. They move to 10-3. Now back in. They were in 13th going into the round. That win should propel them up toward the top 8. I think they're going to need one more win, but they have a chance coming up.
Exactly. I completely agree. So that last game and the end of the game before it was just